To make an Arabian veil, first we're going to start cutting the fabric. Lay it on a cutting mat, line it up with the top edge. It does not have to be perfectly straight, just generally straight, top and bottom. You'll want to use a straight edge ruler to straighten the edge with a rotary cutter. Cut that off, discard the pieces. Then treat the edge with fray check. I keep a pin in the top of mine so it doesn't leak out and dry every time. Hang it over the edge a little bit and just run a small bead down the edge. It will take 2 or 3 minutes to dry. Every time you cut, fray check both edges. Normally you won't have a piece to discard. Now we're going to line this back up. I'm keeping it up off the flat cutting mat so that it doesn't stick to my mat. I'm cutting 12 inches, which will give me a square because the fabric is 12 inches wide. Again, this curls up nicely. Treat both edges with fray check. Just make sure you have a nice thin edge. This will stop the threads from fraying, hence the name fray check. Oops. There's a spot over here where I missed a little. Just go back and get it. This part we'll set aside for use later. Again, stop the top so the fray check does not dry out. Once the ends are dry, we will fold this in half on itself and then stitch the coin fringe along the folded edge. Coin fringe will also need to be cut 12 inches. Cut slightly under rather than slightly over if it comes into the middle of a coin. And you want to cut in the middle of one of these arches. Again, fray check both edges of that to prevent the braid from fraying. Each one of those little threads gets a tiny drop and is allowed to dry for a few minutes. Since I treat this edge when I cut it, it's ready for the next use. Then we stitch the coin fringe all along the folded edge with the fringe up. If you stitch this way, it's easy to get the coins caught underneath and you don't want to stitch through those. Stitch through all the way across. Then you want to cut 2 6-inch pieces of mask elastic. Make a loop with the edges right beside one another and sew those loops to each top corner of the mask so that you're sewing through the braid, which will help stabilize it. If you sew through the mask only, the fabric will tear. That way you have the ear loops for the mask.